Hello and welcome to another edition of Walk the Word. My name is David and it's my pleasure this morning to be taking this session and just reading the scripture and then pulling a few things out. And as you've probably heard Matt say many times in these videos, we're not just looking for information and head knowledge. We want to be able to walk this stuff out in our day-to-day lives. We want to not just take on information, but then we want to be able to live it out, to be able to walk in the goodness of everything the scripture has said. And we're carrying on today in our passages in Mark, and we've reached up to Mark chapter 2 verses 13. And you will find the passage in the description below if you haven't got a Bible. And I'd just really encourage you to read this out loud. Maybe you even want to pause the video and just read it out loud, or maybe you want to try and read along with me. But I'm gonna read the passage now from Mark chapter 2 verses 13 to 17. So it says this: He went out again beside the lake, and all the crowd were coming to him, and he was teaching them. And he passed by, he saw Levi, the son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." And he rose and followed him. And as he reclined at his table in his house, many tax collectors and sinners were reclining with Jesus and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. And the scribes of the Pharisees, when they saw that he was eating with sinners and tax collectors, said to his disciples, "Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners?" And when Jesus heard it, he said to them, "Those who are well have no need for a physician, but those who are sick. I came not to call the righteous, but the sinners." So here we go then. So here we have Jesus encountering Levi, the tax collector. So Jesus has gone out beside the lake, and he has come across this guy called Levi sat at a tax booth, and he calls Levi to come and follow him. And if you read the Gospels of Matthew, we also know that actually Levi was also called Matthew. In the Gospel of Matthew, he is called Matthew. So here Jesus calls another one of his disciples. And again, we see Levi get up straight away and follow him. There's no hesitation. And we saw that earlier on in the book about how when the disciples were called, there was an immediacy of following Jesus and just leaving everything behind. So after Levi has got up and started to follow Jesus, they end up at Levi's house and they end up having a meal together. And at this meal, there are other tax collectors like Levi and other sinners, we are told. Now, tax collectors at the time, they were looked down upon. You probably still look down upon paying taxes, but at the time, the tax collectors, they would often take more money than they should have. They would be overtaxing people, and they would be keeping it for themselves. So I imagine Levi probably had quite a nice house. I imagine the meal he served Jesus and the disciples was quite lavish, because he was in a position where he could spend the money that he'd wrongly taken from people to live this lifestyle. But we find that once the Pharisees, once the religious people of the time had found out that Jesus was at Levi's house eating with these kinds of people, they became angry, sort of indignant. They were questioning, why would Jesus want to be eating and be associated with these type of people? See, the Pharisees at the time, they were the religious people. They were the people praying and reading their scriptures at the temple. They would have been teaching the scriptures, and they would have also been looking to uphold the law of Moses, and they would have seen themselves as good, righteous, religious people. They would have been the religious people of the time. They were keeping the law and doing all the things they thought they should have been doing to get in the good books with God. So when they see Jesus, someone who else was also teaching and praying and was at the temple, when they see him at the Levi's house, they question, why does Jesus want to be associated with these unclean people, these sinners and these tax collectors? Why does he want to be associated with them? And I quite imagine that the religious leaders at the time, the Pharisees, were probably also a bit jealous. They were probably thinking, actually, we want to be hanging out with Jesus. This guy seems to be able to teach the Bible with authority. They often questioned it and tried to trip him over it, but they would listen to him and be amazed at his teaching. So they were probably a little bit jealous that actually Jesus wasn't hanging out with them, but he was hanging out with these the people that they would have seen as unclean and as sinners. And I know for myself, it's really easy to hang out with people that are like me, people who I think are like me. I'd often socialise with people who I think are like me. I'd spend time with people that are like me. I'd probably even sit next to people in church who are like me. Actually, it's really easy to build friendships with people who are like you. But here, Jesus is associating himself with people that are different, who are seen as unclean and people that don't really want to be associated with. And the challenge is here is, when was the last time I ate with someone who I might not want to be associated with? When was the last time I ate with someone that wasn't like, with someone who wasn't like me? When was the last time I spent any time with someone who wasn't like me? Are we prepared to put aside our own reputation to spend it with time and to love people? When was the last time we put our reputation aside to do something for someone else? Are we prepared to go down to someone else's level and show them love? Who are you associated with? See, Jesus responds to the Pharisees by saying, actually, he's come not for the righteous, the religious people. He's come for the unclean, the sinners, the people who need a doctor. And Jesus is saying he's the doctor. So you don't go to a doctor when you have everything together. You only go to a doctor when you really need to. Especially if you're like me, I will go to the doctor at the last possible time possible, when actually, I really need something. And Jesus is saying, actually, it's these people, the people who are the sinners and the people, tax collectors, that need Jesus. He is the doctor who can come and bring healing. And today's challenge is, really, are we prepared to associate ourselves with sinners? Are we prepared to put ourselves out there for people who need Jesus? Not people within our own church community who already know Jesus, but are we prepared to go and meet sinners and people who we don't really want to associate with, and tell them the good news about Jesus, that he can come and bring healing and bring the treatment, he can bring salvation to these people. So that's all for today. I hope you have a good day and a good week, and we'll see you soon. Thank you very much. Bye.